Okay, we've all been there, right? You're sitting in front of a mountain of messy notes, a jumble of raw data, and you've got this nagging question. How in the world do you turn all of this into a finding that's actually clear, professional, and, trustworthy? That's exactly what we're going to break down today, step by step. Let's dive in. I want you to really let this sink in, because this quote is a total game changer. We're all tempted to sound brilliant, to seem like the smartest person in the room. But the real power, the real goal, is to make your work traceable. It's about creating a clear, logical path from your very first observation to your final conclusion that anyone, and I mean anyone, can follow.
So that's it. That's our North Star for this whole journey. Our number one goal, be traceable. This is the one principle that's going to guide everything else we talk about.
So, what does it really mean to be traceable in practice? Well, it's about making a choice. You're choosing clarity over trying to be clever. It means you're building your findings on a solid foundation of accountability. So when someone asks, hey, how'd you get to that conclusion? You've got a confident, direct answer. That right there is how you build real trust in your work. Okay, so you've noticed something interesting. But hold on, before you go shouting it from the rooftops, you gotta stop and ask yourself a really critical question. Is this even a real finding yet? The best way to do this is with what I call an eligibility checklist. Think of it like a quality control gate for your ideas. It's just a simple mental checklist to make sure you're not just chasing a gut feeling, or even worse, presenting a half-baked idea as a final conclusion. Honestly, this one step can save you and your team a massive amount of wasted time. So here are the key questions you need to ask. First, is it repeatable, or was it just some weird one-off fluke? Second, is it specific, or is it kind of vague and fuzzy? And maybe most important, is it based on actual evidence, or is it really just a hunch? If you can't confidently shout yes to all three of those, well, it's not ready. It needs to go back in the oven. All right, your observation passed the test. Awesome. So now, how do we actually structure it so that anyone, from your boss to a new team member, can understand it and, more importantly, use it? Let's talk about the finding formula. We've all read those reports that make your head spin, right? They're just confusing. The solution is to have a standardized format that basically forces you to be clear. I like to think of it as creating a little decision card for each of your findings. This four-part structure is so incredibly powerful. First, you state the condition. What was the specific situation? Second, the observation. What did you actually see happen? Third, the validation. How do you know it's true? Where's the proof? And finally, confidence. How certain are you? So, for example, when a brand new user clicks the help button, we see the page crashes about half the time. This is confirmed by our internal error logs, and we're about 95% certain this is a critical bug. See that? Each step just logically builds on the last. It creates this unbreakable chain of logic. And this is exactly why that formula is so effective. When you present your finding in that exact sequence, you leave almost no room for confusion or misinterpretation. The logic is just crystal clear. It becomes readable, and it feels complete. So, we have our structure down. Perfect. But now we're getting to the most critical part of all, the evidence. This is where the real integrity of your work is on the line. How are you handling your proof? Okay, this is the golden rule. You have to separate your proof from your interpretation. The proof is the what. It's the raw, undeniable fact like a direct quote or a screenshot. The interpretation, on the other hand, is the so what. It's the story you're telling about that fact. Think of it like a crime scene. The bloody glove is the proof. The theory about who it belongs to, that's the interpretation. And the takeaway here is absolutely critical. Never, ever let your interpretation pretend to be proof. They need to be presented separately. You show the evidence first, then you explain what you think it means. The moment you start mixing those two up is the moment you start losing credibility. But listen, it's not enough to just separate proof from interpretation. We also have to be really honest with ourselves about the strength of our evidence. Not all proof is created equal. And this is a really common pitfall where that traceable trail can get super distorted. So let's think about our evidence in tiers. Tier 1 is just the starting point. This is the land of hints and tools. It's that one stray comment you heard in an interview or an interesting but totally unverified data point. It's a breadcrumb. It's full of potential, but that's all it is. Now, Tier 2 is where things start to get interesting. You've got some partial success. Maybe you found an observation is repeatable, but only under very specific conditions. It's a promising lead for sure, but it is not yet a solid, bankable conclusion. And finally, we have Tier 3. This is the gold standard. This is evidence that is fully vetted. It's robust. It's repeatable. Only Tier 3 evidence is strong enough to support a final conclusion that you'd bet your reputation on. And here it is, the biggest danger of all. The trail gets completely distorted when you take a Tier 1 hint and you present it like it's a Tier 3 conclusion. That is a fundamental misrepresentation of your work, and it is the absolute fastest way to erode trust with your team.
So why do we go through all this trouble? Why all this discipline around traceability and evidence and tiers? Because the payoff is enormous, not just for you, but for everyone you work with.
Let's try and put a number on it. Imagine you had a little mini calculator that can measure the impact of having this clean, traceable process. What do you think the biggest win would be? What would it measure?
10 hours. Seriously. Imagine saving 10 hours of pure confusion on every single project. 10 hours you're not wasting debating what a finding actually means or hunting down the source of some vague claim. That is a massive, tangible win.
Because ultimately, what you're doing is you're building a repeatable workflow. It cuts down on the mental clutter. It stops you from accidentally exaggerating your claims. It builds deep trust within your team. And yeah, it saves a ton of time and energy by making sure every single result finds its proper place.
So, as we wrap up here, I'm just going to leave you with this one question to take back to your own work. The next time you have something to report, ask yourself, is my finding traceable? Because making that trail clear for everyone to see, that's how you make your work truly matter.